Hey everybody, welcome to Mixing with Swigs. This time we are working on Ice Cap Zone from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And our lovely provider of music this time is Christian Richardson Music. And you can check out his channel in the description below. Now, this song has already come out. He did a great job and it's on his channel, but for the fun of the experiment, and to keep up my mixing chops, we're going to be taking a look at how I would approach mixing his song. Now, it's what I would kind of consider a standard rock metal sort of song. I've already done a few things here, so I'm going to spend some time just talking about what I've already did. I'm recording in a little bit of a new method, so hopefully the quality looks cooler. So just taking a look, what we've got given to us is a MIDI drum file, something I loaded into my own Superior Drummer map that we'll take a look at. I've got 3 lead guitars, your standard 2 rhythm guitars, and I've already kind of sliced stuff up just in case there's any noise. We have 3 different sort of clean guitars as well as some clean channel rhythm guitars here, and then I was given the bass as a direct input file, and I've copied that over to a few other things. So I'm going to go over the drums, and I'll just mute this out. One thing I'm doing new that I've learned recently from some new tutorials is kind of what's called a top-down approach, where you're already aiming to have the final product sound pretty great. So we have a EQ going to the master bus, which is receiving all the instruments, and right now there's a bit of this low shelf and a curve that's kind of peaking around, I want to say like 45 hertz. This is really just like about carving the shape of a song to sound commercially fit, bright, active, and exciting to listen to. So obviously we have a bass hump here, and we have some of a high shelf going on here with a little node around the 5 to 10. And while that might seem like you're raising sibilants, we're going to take care of so much of the the music that we're not going to let anything harsh get raised. We're going to have it smoothened out to where we're not really hurting the sound. So let's take a look at my Superior Drummer, the kit that I'm using right now. It's going to be a little bit of a mix of the New York Avatar kit and some loaded cymbals from Foundry. Obviously, you want to double check that you have your memory fully loaded. I've noticed that's been a problem for me in a few projects just to save space. So I've been really trying hard not to let any of that screw up here, automatic cache. So we've got a standard sort of, replaced kick with Tama. We have doubled snares here. The Ludwig Black Beauty from both kits. One is tuned a little tighter, so you're getting the combination effect. And then we've got an array of replaced toms and cymbals. Honestly, if your samples or if the recording you have sounds fine individually, then mixing is just all about bringing out that sound. We don't need to kill ourselves to make stuff sound much better. Now, looking at the MIDI map, which is also important when receiving from somebody else, I'm not sure why I'm not able to open this. Open in built-in MIDI editor. There we go. So looking at this, the velocities are pretty diversified. We have only 1 kick usage, which is okay. I like to bring this up so that the average sits a little higher, just so that we're not having any trouble there. At the beginning of the song, it's actually a little more annoying, so I'll return that down to where it was. This is really a bit of a composition thing, so I'm trying not to mess with it as much as I can. And unfortunately, I'm not sure why I'm receiving some random tracks here. I think when I imported, we got a little messed up, so let's take a look. Okay, yeah, I see the problem. So these clean tracks are actually going underneath here. Sometimes this stuff can happen. When I'm being so neat, I end up hiding some things that can cause issues. Okay, so that should solve that issue. Right, so what you're hearing right now is going to be, let's look at the kick drum. So I've got some semi-standard stuff going on. I've combined all the kicks in my Superior Drummer that I've kind of mixed them together, and when I get more comfortable, I'll probably start mixing the microphones separately. But you know, just trying to bring out some of the click and trying to get some thump from the low end, but avoiding it being too boomy. We don't even need this. And then we have a compressor, which is, we're going at a little bit hard. I can ease back on that to like 4. I don't like to have that pumping over compressed sound too much. So let's see. And you know, I have fast attack but fast release too, and this way I'm not killing the transients as much as you would think, because it's only really reducing like you know, 0 to -3 dB. And I also have this dry mix knob that's the same as parallel compression, so my compressor is acting, but you can always hear the uncompressed sound combined. Just, you know, providing a good consistent amount of rhythm, but we're not getting in the way of anything. Now, we'll get into side chaining when we hit the bass, but for now, let's look at our snare. Oh, I'm sorry. So we also have a little bit of tape saturator, which I find really useful for getting realistic sound. And what it does, again, is it's generating different harmonics and frequencies to fill in those gaps that otherwise would be kept, because a digital signal is literally, if you zoom in all the way, it's a square wave, kind of like hammered down, and all this does is, you know, add enough of surrounding frequencies to where you don't feel like it's digital. So you can definitely hear the difference. Now, we've got a snare here, and what's going on there is I'm trying to kind of balance out the low and highs to where we don't have any one area sounding too off. Let's get rid of this. Just a little cut. I'll show you when that's not necessary. So, and now I also have a compressor going on here, and since the snare is already so, you know, powerful, we're really just controlling it like a limiter almost. I find that like having a decently slow attack and then quicker release lets you get some of the smackiness, but you're still controlling the volume to where you don't feel like you're listening to a clipping snare. And finally what happens afterwards is another tape saturator, and I'm really going heavy on this one. So again, the purpose of the tape saturator is just to even out, create some new frequencies, and just overall connect this kit together from what is basically randomly selected digital files of someone really hitting a snare. So, and then I have the separate track here. So let's take a look at that. I have this freeware plugin I discovered called Stillwell, and basically it's a type of reverb, but it's very fake, so we get a wider spread out sound. So the effect of that reverb is pretty nice. You know, I just have, you know, mostly maxed out wet without clipping. I try to keep a decent room size and a little bit of pre-delay too. What this does is it kind of sets the sample ahead of when you're actually hitting the snare, and eventually you get like a thicker, almost like stretched out feel. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm adding a noise gate. You can use any gate. And what happens after the snare hits and the reverb hits is it cuts it off right before the next one comes, so you clean up a lot of those stacked reflections of reverb, which again is just like a copy of the file played back, you know, over and over at different volumes. So you can see the volume spikes up and then it gets trimmed off as it drops in volume, which is shown by the bar below. So we're just cleaning up the tail ends of the reverb, and ultimately you get a sound that's pretty thick. And now if I add the room microphone, so we're kind of developing the snare sound as simply and cleanly as possible that way. Now let me leave the drum bus on. Now let's take a look at the overheads because it's really quick. All I'm really doing here is in Superior Drummer itself, I am actually, I want to pan those a little closer, maybe like 68. And I'm receiving bleed from only the toms, hi-hats, and some of the extra snares, and I don't need the kick. Definitely need to take that off. So the reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want to hear the kick. This is not really a jazz arrangement. We're getting plenty of kick from everywhere else, and it's just easier to control without it. I would put the regular snare too, but you know, we already have so much snare in the other ones. It's kind of a fun experiment to try not to mix with so much. And then I'm just easing off around 200. I could even go like a bit further back because I'm not afraid of getting the low end from my kit because there's no bleed. So it's feeling really thick and I don't have to do much. Now let's try to find a spot with the hi-hat, because all I'm really doing there is decently hard compression. I could go a little faster on the attack if I wanted to, because I really don't like hi-hats. Like the idea of having them in the mix. It's kind of weird why that's happening. Okay, so let's go to the intro. I tend to just estimate where it feels like I'm playing a hi-hat and pan it there and leave it low because it's coming through in so many other microphones. It's really annoying to hear a loud hi-hat. I don't want this to be a little fatter, wider. Yeah. Okay, that's a little less annoying. So now for the toms, I've already panned and routed them. Not too much EQ. Let's find a spot that uses it because honestly, this song does not use a lot of fills that involve toms. So, you know, let's just go to the one spot that it does. Now, I actually had to write this one a little bit, just because of the differences in drum kits. So, I'm going to have to translate this over. Yeah. So let's quickly. Something like that. And we might need to do the same for the others. One important thing that I've learned from a lot of projects as of lately is discuss the drum map if you're collaborating with another individual. Let's quickly I do apologize for not kind of double checking, but hey, I try to make these as raw as possible. I'll probably fast forward through this process future row. Oops. And I try not to make them so resonant, but you know, with the samples I tend to use, it just makes sense. Kind of compressing these harder than I love to. Yeah, I don't want it to be all attacky, but that's kind of how they are in nature. So I try to fix that a little. But yeah, so that's toms for you, and also they're gonna bleed into the room mic. So we'll learn a little bit more from looking at those. I'm actually gonna move this EQ to the top, and the EQ for the room mic, I try not to screw with it because we're already compressing it. Try to like bring out where there's not too much warmth and kill harshness here, but it's just really like a raw trashy sound on purpose anyway. We also have a mono mic inside causing a little bit of fuss. If you take a look, this mono microphone here is actually pretty prominent. Or it should be. Hold on. Let's give it all the bright sounds, because that's what kind of mono trash sounds to me. Thickening everything up. Now, a lot of you guys might be wondering why a room mic matters, and I've discovered from, listening, a room microphone really is a stitcher upper of all these other parts because it's capturing nonstop. It's not gated. It's not, close up or anything. It's just capturing all the dynamics of your kit, and you can use it as a really good way to fill up things, make it sound, realistic at this point. Simplest word to say. Especially when it comes to receiving symbol information and stuff. It's really nice because it's just like constantly there. Now, one thing you might notice is that the kit is also going to my regular reverb, which is a convolution reverb. For those of you guys watching for the first time one of my videos, I started using these more than anything. Impulse responses are special files that are recorded by a microphone in different types of rooms and areas, and what they do is they create kind of like an image of that room, and then whenever you use it as like a reverb or load it into different programs, it copies what that room would act like if you were recording in it. So if, for example, if I put a drum kit in my room and I had an impulse response of this room, then someone could record their drum kit and apply a reverb that sounds like the drum kit is in my room, or a cathedral, or a subway. So there's thousands and thousands of free impulse responses. I'll try to remember to post a link to a website I use to get tons. These are all free to download. But people do sell their own. You can use them for guitar cabinets. I highly recommend you do so if you're not using an amp simulation that has very high quality cabinet sounds. But basically, I'm using the Apple Matrix Reverb here, which is, I believe it's sampled from Logic Pro's impulse response catalog, but I might be mistaken. And basically, the drum kit's going in here. Now, I'm not sure why we can only hear the reverb later on in the chain and not when soloed. I think it's because I need to solo these two. That'll do it. Now, you might be hearing a lot of crackling. That's kind of just like the sample size of it. Let me see if I can... I think rendering out will be able to. Unfortunately, Reverb does have some glitches now and then, but I'm thoroughly enjoying the sound that we have right now. And again, this is all together how I'm mixing the drums for the song. So I'm gonna start with the bass because I feel like that's pretty prominent. So when you record bass guitar, you want to get your levels high enough to where the loudest parts don't clip, and the bass can be a very dynamic instrument, so it's important to double check that. Just listening now. Now, you can tell a lot about the nature of the physical bass itself because the bass guitar is almost always played and recorded based on the settings that you put on your preamp, the physical knobs on your bass, for example. This one's done with the Sound Gear Ibanez bass, and they can be pretty bright depending on how you set them. This one has a little bit of a warbliness to it. It's kind of... we should probably just take a look through an EQ. So let's listen to the raw. So a lot of that honky sound is coming here. Fortunately, I don't know how to... I think this is pause. No, it wasn't. But yeah, we're getting a lot of this side, and I want to use this raw track just on its own. No amp sims, no pod farms, biases, amplitubes. And I'm going to cut off just the very low. That's not what I wanted. I'm actually very surprised it's... Oh, there we go. Okay. We'll cut off maybe like 30-ish. Oh. Now, okay. Here's a little opinion idea. When recording pick bass, I tend to like using a thin pick for two reasons now. One is that if you use a thinner pick, your pick is going to receive all of the swing whenever you play, and the strings will stay closer in tune because there's, you know, less slack affecting them. The pick is the one bending, not the strings. Another point is a heavier pick is going to effectively change the sound, just like an acoustic guitar can be recorded with a heavier pick and sound darker. And this can pose a problem if the pick sound isn't blending well, which I personally don't think it will. So I'm going to try to take it out, basically. Just a few cuts. Now let's hear this. Now, the guitars in this song were recorded also a little pokey-ish, and I think that's like from it being a little too mid-heavy, so we'll probably compensate by bringing those down and leaving the bass, because the bass just has this smoother quality to it. I think that's a little more pleasant to the ear. But again, we're not completely done. Now, I like to add a compressor to the bass, and I'm actually going to try to use more freeware in here, since it doesn't really matter to me. I'm going to set this up for like, let's start there, give it like 10 ms, just something that smoothens. We'll get it like around here. Now, over here is probably one of the most important parts. A lot of people constantly say, I don't get compression, I don't get compression. Compression is literally just someone lowering the volume when you tell it to, and you tell it in math. It's almost like easy to understand if you're a programmer. So, if I told you at minus 27, whenever the bass gets as loud as minus 27 dB, I want you to lower it, or I want you to lower it like 1 dB. That's kind of how a compressor works. Now, what it really does is, because we have to break down that process a little better, is at 27 dB, I want you to wait 10 milliseconds, and then I want you to let in 1 decibel of volume if for every 3.7 decibels of volume it has overflowing, you know? So if I said infinite, then that means like nothing gets through. It's a fraction, basically. So how about for every 3.5 decibels that the bass has that's too much and it's carrying all that extra volume, we'll take 1 decibel and let it through. Now, what this ends up equating to is you're reducing the amount of volume, or gain reduction. So look at these numbers. I tend to try to hit -3. So it's getting a little harsh. mean, I don't care too much because I don't care about the quality of the DI that much. But now when it comes to the amped sound, let's listen to that. It's very bright, and that can be bothersome. But there's no brightness from the DI, so it's okay. We're just gonna make it like dedicated to that sound area. I also want to cut off the ultra low area. And I really do want to get rid of this crispiness. You know, I'm not killing it, but I really want it to blend with the guitars. And we already have a dirty channel where the dry amp is going into my bias effects tone that's, you know, driven through a guitar amp and so on. So it just doesn't make sense to let out all that. See, we're losing a lot of decibels there, and I don't want that. So let's try to make that a little transparent. Again, dynamic instruments like pianos and vocals and I guess bass, they tend to get compressed more to balance it out, and it gets annoying. There's still that rattliness. I might just change this to high cut, as they call it. See, that's a little better. Now, if we take a look at my dirty bass, as I call it, this is being overdriven by a drive pedal, a little bit specific boosts, and overall what we're trying to get there is a blend with the guitar, so we need a mix while listening to both in order to be really happy here. So that's pretty good. I just flipped my mouse. Let's flip that back. And now I'm just gonna take a full look at our bass, and we're gonna try to compress these together to, you know, blend them. So I'm taking out this area because obviously guitars are sitting here and it's just creeping really close, but not meshing well. Okay, so that's sounding pretty decent. And again, if you listen to parts that don't have the dirty bass in it, we might, you know, find some new stuff. I'm finding it a little thin. It's just really weird. Maybe I need to enable this guy. Let's see. Alright, I just needed to re-enable a kick drum. I think that's about it. So why don't we compress this bass all together, just to glue it. Now, one thing I will say, it's very useful, if not essential, to mix and listen to some of this stuff on speakers. Stuff that'll emulate bass more and really give you a sense of punch, or like mix in a very quiet area. Fortunately, I have to have like a fan on or I suffocate and die. So I'll probably be listening on monitors before being sure this is the one. So let's look at guitars. So it's very evenly recorded, which is good, but we can tell there's just a lot of highs coming out that don't need to, and we want to make sure it's secured with the low end, so let's try to blend. Let me explain a little bit. So I'm just taking away little bits that are harsh and painful to hear over a long period of time before my ears get kind of like dulled, and then I start ignoring that. And I'm trying to get rid of this low end area to let his bass cut through, since, you know, that has like those nice distorted spikes and it sits really well like here, and the guitars are all here. So I like the crossover. Now, I should explain, with that top-down mix thing going on, you are listening to a few other effects going on. I'm going to actually just show you I do have like a multi-band compressor that needs to definitely be changed as the volume levels do. So let's just quickly... Okay, so now I need to fix my kick. Because it's very fat. And that's kind of annoying. That's a little better. So back to guitars. I really don't see much reason to do too much. I think what might be nice is to engage in just a little bit of tape saturation again, but this time try to hit the areas that the guitar's lost in the EQ. Very subtle, but I don't want to make it harsher. I want it to be more realistic. Honestly, that's kind of all I feel the rhythms need right now. Let's look at the clean guitars. So I like to keep voices somewhat centered, but I don't want it to block percussion. So I like the harmonies to come out further though. Obviously, I'm sending these clean guitars to another reverb bus, and this one usually has something. Let me get rid of it here. This one's gonna have like crazy larger effects. This one's right now on a Chicago stage, not that crazy large. Just fine. Alright. Now, I could look at it through an EQ, but there's really not a tremendous amount wrong with this. Let's use re-EQ. Freeware. It's lighter. So I'm gonna make a division here. Just try to work on the MIDI quickly so that it's not so harsh, I guess. Yeah, it's so much smoother that way. Also, let me just make sure I didn't get a disconnect on. Okay, all of our samples are in check. I'm gonna add a compressor, even though there might have been one in the guitar itself, just to blend them in together, but it's going to be very subtle. Slow attack, slow release, quick release rather. Now, I'm going to do essentially the same stuff to the clean bus and the rhythm bus, and that's just going to make me, I'm going to copy those effects over. And then we'll readjust. As with normal rhythm guitars, I like them stereo panned, but I also can play a little bit if there's something else. There wasn't. So I'm gonna ease the bass back in there. Maybe even trim the harshness. So that's cool. I like to have a bit of a crazier sort of effect on delays here. obviously now we can get to the fun part. Lead guitars, solos, crazy stuff. This is going to basically involve me looking at lead guitars. Actually, I'm going to quickly check my multiband, because again, with top-down, stuff changes, and you don't want it to get harsh and even. So obviously there's some serious like problems without mixing first. So I'm gonna do my old-fashioned, let's go like 21 left and right, because these lead guitars are basically very you know, straight up, a little compressed looking, and no nonsense, you know. So alright, so let's take an EQ, and we're gonna try to trim off a little bit of the harshness coming off. It's mostly as a result of the guitar. So I'll low cut, get rid of where the guitars are, the rhythms. So it's pretty decent now. I'm still not crazy about how it's sounding, but it's a good start. I'm gonna try to add a little bit of compression. I know I switched compressors, I'm sorry. So, as you'll notice, there's no real delay or reverb here. I lied. There's not a lot. So, I'll use the same Valhalla Shimmer. I'm gonna make it a bit of a stereo effect. Do that might be fun is sidechain. So I right click the routing and then I receive the kick, I hit it again, and I change it to 3/4. What this does is it sends my kick drum to my bass bus, but it sends it as a special new channel to so that it knows we're gonna sidechain with it. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up my compressor and I'm gonna hit expert and receive an external source so it knows. I'm gonna use mid and side. Doesn't really matter. And now you'll see the volume of the kick drum come in here instead of, you know, just the bass. Okay, let me explain what I'm doing. So basically, the side control level is how much of the side, or the new track that's being received, the kick, is coming in. So I like boosting it just to make sure it's actually going to hit the bass. Then it's working like a compressor, and the mid-level, of course, is, you know, how much of the original is present. So I'm trying to drop the bass just a little when the kick comes in. This is just a volume clarity kind of thing. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Fortunately, my reverb isn't loading, so I'm gonna have to play with it just before. But I think what we're gonna do is render this out, and you guys can take a listen. Besides that, leave any questions, comments. Please check out Christian Richardson Music's channel. I'm gonna link the mixed video of his version in the description, and hopefully this helps you guys with mixing. If you guys are watching for the team up challenge, maybe this gave you some new ideas. Thanks so much.